Hi, this is Sean, and this is Akshina Gupta's full interview on Morally Sound. You can also listen to her episode on the Morally Sound playlist, and if you'd like to hear more, stay updated with the Pingree Onward Facebook page. Can you start with your name and when you're graduating from Pingree?
So my name is Akshina Gupta, and I'm going to be graduating this year in 2017, like in a month.
Yep. When did you come to Pingree?
I came freshman year.
And how do you think Pingree has changed over the years for you?
Honestly, probably not a lot, right? I think
Sure.
most of the change in experience for me was based upon like my own changes, or like how like I got accustomed to the environment. There was a few changes in terms of just like for example, like in like a few dress code changes or stuff like that when we had the administration change from like Dean Markinson to Dean Ross.
Yep.
So a few changes there, but like nothing like big that like changed the culture of Pingree or something like that.
Are there personal changes that you want to go into, or?
I mean, with personal changes, I think it's more just getting accustomed to the environment, and like I feel like a lot of times your opinions about a place change as you experience it more. Like for example, like when I first came to Pingree, it was more comparative between like my experience in like Warren Middle School, which is like a public school, versus like here.
Right.
And but like I think as I spent more time at Pingree, I started to realize what I actually like attributed to things like the honor code versus just like things like the homogeneity of like the environment and like the type of students we have here, or the type of teachers we have here. So like while originally I would be like everything good about this place is like because honor code, I think I started to like figure out why things actually happened.
Fun fact, Akshina went to the same middle school as Will DeGrande and I.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Akshina. So then, what do you attribute to the honor code and what don't you?
At this point, my view is kind of essentially that the honor code functions like... Okay, I used this metaphor earlier with you, but I'm going to repeat it.
Sure.
But, it's kind of like, instead of like a parent like setting a bunch of rules or like pretending to be angry like when you like do something bad, it's like, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Like, the honor code is essentially a way to like try and trigger your own consciousness to make the decisions. I'm not saying that's always effective, right? Like, but the point is, afterwards, like when you do break a rule, it's like, we're disappointed in you. You made bad choices and are a bad person and should have better morals, right? Like, instead of like, you broke like this arbitrary rule that's written in like page 7 of the student handbook, right? It's like, you didn't act as a good person, which I feel like tries to like place like a bigger obligation upon the students.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that's always effective. Like, we still break a bunch of rules, right? Things like that stuff always happens, but like it's just, it changes the phrasing of the conversation and like the place where we try and attribute like blame.
Do you think that is a more preferable method than just saying you broke X arbitrary rule and you get Y punishment? I
mean, it does embrace subjectivity, and I love subjectivity because the world is subjective. I'm not sure if in enforcement it always ends up being that way. Like, I feel like a lot of times it ends up being like, you broke this rule, but like it just ends up being like more ambiguously worded rules.
Okay.
Also, I was gonna say something. I had a thought.
Take all the time you want, Akshina. I can cut it out in post, or we can talk about something else.
Let's talk about something else. I can get back to this.
Sure. Do you think it's important that Pingree has an honor code?
Okay, so... Oh, actually, I remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
It's kind of related. I think one benefit of the honor code, the fact like that we try and like implore students to like make good decisions, is it helps with the whole like trusting the students thing. You know, like the whole motto of Pingri, which is like the greatest respect is due to the students.
Yes.
I think that actually ends up having a much bigger impact on the community. Like all the things like I used to think were like just straight up honor code. Like for example, like we can like leave our stuff anywhere, or like teachers will walk out during tests, or like give us a bunch of like take homes and things like that, and have like and just like trust us to make like the right decisions about what or where to do. I think that ends up creating like a much better community and culture within the school. I'm not sure if it's always effective. Like I know people cheat and like the teachers walk out of the rooms. Like people like take stuff from the areas, but like I feel like I still think that's a preferable system, right? Like I don't think it like increases the amount of violations, right?
Right.
I feel like it probably at least lightly decreases them. I'm not sure if it has like a very good impact. That'd be a cool study to do actually.
Yeah.
See how many violations you have per like student, but like that's be hard to report.
Yeah.
But like even if we like borrow stuff from like the areas around each other, I feel like we always return it, right? Like I borrowed like a water bottle today for like my comp sci project because I needed something metal, but like I like returned it. Right? I feel like there's no real reason for us to try and take stuff or take advantage of other people because people are fairly willing to just give it to us. So it's like you don't want to take advantage of your teacher's trust or like the student's trust because like you know they'll probably just give it to you anyway.
Do you think there's things that we can improve on the honor code or the culture at Pingri?
So what do you mean by like improve on the honor code?
I suppose so some previous suggestions have things like the honor code manifesting itself in the online world with cyberbullying among other things happening. We do have our fair use policy and all, but
the honor code doesn't apply to people being online?
It doesn't. So the honor code right now doesn't necessarily follow you onto the online realm and outside of school, right? So right now, Pingri's jurisdiction is within school grounds or within reasonable limit, you know? And we obviously do have things like the fair use policy, but it's not like Pingri is policing you outside of school.
I mean, I actually think that's kind of a good thing. Like, again, this comes to the whole, like, trust thing, right? Like, the point of the honor code is that we don't police you.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, and the idea is we're supposed to be creating an environment where, like, we go into, like, the larger world. Like, even when I graduate, theoretically, I should, like, be taking the concepts of, like, honorable behavior and doing stuff that's good for the community, like, afterwards. I mean, you're not going to be able to, like, police the students all the time or, like, enforce the honor code. In fact, I think that's kind of, like, the point, right? The honor code is something that's less enforceable. It's not something that's like clear cut, like you can like wave like a baton to like keep the students in check. It's more like we trust you to do the right thing and let's hope you do it. Yeah.
What do you think it means to be honorable?
That's a very vague question.
I know it is a vague question.
So, like, according to Pingri, or like my own morals, or what?
Let's start with what you think Pingri asks of you in terms of being honorable, and then you can move into your own definition.
I think Pingri's honor is focused on A, academic honesty. There's a big emphasis on that, probably because it's an academic institution, and B, just like the general like util, like good for the community type thing. Like, do things that you think will help others. Don't try and like take advantage of others. Don't be mean to others. Don't hurt others' feelings. You know, just like do the thing that you think would help the most people.
Util is truetil.
Util is not truetil.
So, what do you think your sense of the word honor is?
I think my sense of the word honor ends up having a lot more to do with like connections and stuff like that. Like I think loyalty and like differing duties end up playing like a big part in things. Like you know how like there's like always that ambiguous question like should you turn in that friend when they're cheating, right? Like I feel like Pingri kind of like always had this like implicit like interpretation where it's like it's good to like turn that person in, like even though like it's even though like it's a betrayal of like friendship, right?
Right.
Like, it's good for the community, and like that's the view that the school needs to adopt, right? Like it makes sense, right? They're looking forward to this. They're looking to try and like help the school environment.
Yeah.
But like I feel like a lot of times, like personally, like honor ends up placing more emphasis upon like personal connections, right? Like it's really hard to betray a friend, and I'm not sure that's always like a good thing to do that. I also think personally, I think a lot of the focus on honor isn't about what you do, but what you try to do. So like, can you guys be quiet out there?
No.
That's staying in the podcast.
So for example, like, yeah, can you please be quiet, please? So for example, I think a lot of the times, like, I'm a debater, right?
Right.
I love to debate about opinions, morals, directions. Like even last night, I was having like a debate with my friends about like, well, what is the goal of our friend group and like the direction we want to take
Oh god,
it in.
that was.
It was
fun. It was just a bit of a waste of time, but sure.
No, that's the point, right? I think debates and stuff are never wastes of time. I think a lot of times, like personally, I think like trying to refine my intentions and my goals and figuring out what actually honor is like my form of exacting honor. Like you know, like the whole like cliche, like the point of life is to figure out the point of life.
Right.
Yeah, like the point of honor in many ways is to figure out the point of honor, like what I want from it.
Okay. So way back when, I think in the 80s or 90s, before both of us were born, the Pingree culture with the honor code was that if you saw a violation and you didn't report it, you were violating the honor code. And we've since changed from that. So with the point you made right before about Pingree having that implicit push towards reporting people who violate the honor code,
Yes.
does your opinion change on that, on the honor code, or no? Not really.
I mean, I knew that, which
Okay,
is another
sure.
one of the reasons that I think there's an implicit push. They're like, we won't make it a rule anymore, but like, know that like, we kind of always wanted you to report. And like, a lot of times, like, like you hear like people talking about it and how like the hard path is like not always is like the good one, and like it's harder to like report your friends and stuff like that. But I think that misunderstands the point of loyalty, right?
Right.
Like it's hard to let your friends like do things that like you disagree with, right? And like it can be like a really hard debate internally sometimes too. So like I don't think it's as clear cut as the school like tries to like make us believe a lot of the times. I feel like our own morals, like, and our own like sense of duty or like connections end up playing like a bigger part in like our moral sense than honor. Can I actually do like a small philosophy tangent?
Sure.
Like this might also there's like this philosophy called like ethics of care.
Yes, ethics of care.
Which talks essentially about how like our sense of morals or like what we should do comes from like our interpersonal relations, and they're like competing
right,
like holds on us, right? Like I love Pingree, I want to do right by it, right? But like I love you too, right? Like I wouldn't want to like betray you.
Thanks,
right?
Akshina.
So like I feel like a lot of times like how it ends up acting in practice ends up being governed more by our relations than by like rules.
Okay.
Like, this might also, by the way, be like a more female perspective because ethics of care is a feminist moral philosophy.
Right.
So you might think differently.
Right. Yeah. So let's go into your debating life. Can we? Ow! I just hit my head against the staircase. Can you go a bit into your debate life and how it started, how that's changed your opinions, and maybe you've already mentioned your sense of the word honor, but maybe how you process moral quandaries?
So debate has had a big impact on my life. I do LD debate, which is often called philosophy debate, meaning a lot of my time is spent debating philosophy, reading about philosophers, reading philosophies. In fact, for fun, I read philosopher comics called existential comics.
Yes, which you shared to me. And I also did
Good.
LD for 2 years.
I know, but they're good. I'm sharing
They
this
are
with the
good.
podcast people.
They don't know I did LD, not necessarily.
Oh yeah. But anyway, I think a lot of times, like my specific moral beliefs at a time could actually be charted pretty well using the type of things I read in debate, which is kind of sad but kind of true. Like, I actually wrote about this in my college essay. Like, for example, like I started out with like the traditional like American values with like Locke, which is like kind of like what our Constitution is based upon, like life, liberty, and he uses property instead of like pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
It equates to the same thing, and so like I started out with like traditionalist values in that way, and like didn't really like think too deeply about like questioning the basis of those. Then like as I started getting more into philosophy, like I went into like more esoteric stuff like Kant, or like trying to justify everything, and like that was a big focus on intentions, by the way, and intentionality, which I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, we can get to that later.
We can get to that later. So more like trying to create a more logically sound and rational view. I also had this phase called skepticism, and skepticism is the idea
I remember that phase.
that everything is subjective. You can't know anything. You can't know you exist. You can't know if anything is right because it all like is unprovable, which was an interesting phase.
It was a very interesting phase.
But I think a lot of the times what ends up happening is that's how I would logically think about any like solutions that I wanted to like any moral quandaries I had, right? I would think about them using my like current like philosophical perspective, but I think a lot of the times it'd be hard to emotionally follow through with it, right? Like for example, like skepticism is a great example, right? I still think it's probably logically true, right? Like we probably can't know anything at all, which is kind of sad, but like I could never bring myself to like act upon it, and there's like no real purpose to acting upon it actually, right? Like it's not like because I know skepticism is true, I'm gonna be like, let's like light Pingree on fire, right? Like it's just like there's not going to be any emotional follow through a lot of the times with the more radical rational beliefs I have, but I think they do end up like framing like smaller things, right? Like skepticism made me like less sure of my beliefs and like more okay with like moral subjectivism, where like you need to understand everything in the context of a person, their environment, and like their own morals, and like people almost always try and do the best things that they think they can do. Like people don't, like nobody's ever like the villain of their own story, right? Like Jafar was probably the hero of his story.
Probably.
So like these perspectives I think end up like framing like little point of view things. Also, just so you know, like my current perspective is probably either some combination of like some social like I don't know how do you phrase it, social like critical theory. I don't know, how would I explain that, Sean?
I feel like social critical is pretty apt. Do you want to go a little more in depth into it, and then we can try and give it a label after?
So it ends up having a lot to do with like empathy in terms of social relations, realizations. Shut up! Sorry, Sean.
No, it's fine. I'm just keeping this in the podcast for the novelty.
So it ends up having to do a lot with social empathy. It's quite liberal beliefs. Trying to focus on like inequalities, things we do wrong in society. It often takes quite radical viewpoints. I usually try to mix that in with a little bit of like, just like, I feel like a lot of times like there's remnants of your old beliefs, right? Like I still believe in like intentionality from like Kant and some like degree of like the freedom and stuff like opted for by like Locke, and I logically still believe that you should be skeptical of everything. And like there's a little bit of like the whole like ethics of care thing that I was talking about, like focusing on relations and stuff like that. So more of a weird amalgam, but like there's like more of a focus on like the social or like governmental purposes.
what have been some of your favorite debate cases to run, or maybe the ones that have been most impactful on your views, besides Skep?
Black nihilism was fun.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Black nihilism?
Sure. It's essentially the belief that social minorities should stop believing the political system because it always betrays them. It's like a form of it's essentially nihilism, but like for politics, or as they call it, a politics of hope. It was just impactful because like a lot of times it helps you realize how like disenfranchised so many people feel from like our society and our government, and how little like consideration we often give to that. Like, so many people in this country have so little voices, and so like that also, like, it's interesting because people always tend to view nihilism as like super pessimistic, like you're giving up hope, like how, right? But it's weird because nihilism is strangely spiritual, right? It's like nothing really matters, so like do whatever you want.
Are there any other cases that you think have changed a lot about your views?
I think it'd be cool to talk about intentionality with the honor code.
Sure. So why not? Let's talk about that. Right. For anyone listening, right now in honor board cases, we do not judge intentionality, or as an outright fact. So Akshina, what's your take on that?
I think that's stupid.
Well said. Well said. Would you like to elaborate? Yes, please.
Okay, so essentially, again, this is part of Kant's beliefs as well. There's this entire branch of philosophy called deontology, where it's like, it's not the actions that matter, it's like what you tried to do. Because like, think about this, right? Like, if I like tried to like help someone and like accidentally, like, I don't know, like did something wrong, right? Like I like tried to save someone's, like if a doctor tried to save someone's life and accidentally like nicked an artery and like killed them, right? Like you wouldn't say like that person was like a murderer in like the traditional sense of a murderer, right? They were not trying to murder that patient. They were trying to save their lives.
Right.
So like a lot of the times, like intentionality kind of like frames the context of what happened, right? Like if we think about like all of the crimes that have happened in this country, like have you seen the Humans of New York page?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Like there was this entire segment about like people in the criminal justice system, people in the prisons. First of all, like so many of them were people with mental illnesses, which is a context or intention we should consider, right? But essentially, like, you would realize, you'd, like, feel sympathy for, like, this woman who, like, murdered someone, right? And it's, like, I feel like it was, like, helpful to, like, think of that, because it's, like, these people aren't, like, evil. Like, no one's really, like, evil. They're just, like, got, like, weird intentions that are, like, hard to understand. And I think a lot of the times, like, it's important to consider the context of why and how someone did something. People can make bad decisions, but I rarely think they want to.
Okay.
Oh, but also, by the way, I do understand that it's really hard to judge intentions, because, like, you could just, like, straight up lie, right? Like, you could, like, go in there and be like, I pushed that person down the stairs because, like, I was having a mental breakdown, right? Like,
you gave me this exact same example yesterday.
I know, it's just the one I thought of, okay?
I know. Okay, so let's kind of talk about the honor board as a group / institution. So we've done a couple of efforts in the past couple of years. The Scruples game, I made the Facebook page.
I did not know the Facebook page existed until like a week ago when you messaged me about it.
Okay.
Just saying.
Sure. And I also had that speech with a couple of the different political group leaders and whatnot back in December, late November, post-election. And you mentioned that maybe they weren't the most effective things. Do you want to go into detail about that?
Oh yeah, the political speech, I just thought it wasn't really effective because, first of all, it kind of framed a thing where it was like, don't debate with people, like, agree with them and, like, be super nice, right? And I understand that that wasn't necessarily the intention. It was just, like, debate respectfully instead of, like,
But it didn't come out that way.
Yes,
and my text didn't actually say debate respectfully, which is my fault.
And this might be because, like, you know me, like, I love to
yes,
debate
I know you do,
everything.
Akshina. I know you do.
Like, I play, like, devil's advocate and, like, everything, right? But I think, like, discussions are always helpful for bettering opinions, right? I don't think we should be discouraging dissent within a community.
Sure.
I think dissent actually probably makes the community much better, right? Like, even if there's somebody I, like, vehemently disagree with and, like, whose opinions are, like...
Yeah.
Kind of, like, you know, not...
Yes.
helpful to me.
Yeah.
Like, I still, like, find it useful to, like,
Sure.
talk to them, right? Because, like, just because you stop debating doesn't mean they'll stop having those opinions, right? Like, for example, like, I was talking to, like, Aiden Dillon about, like, a bunch of, like, his political opinions the other day, and, like, he has opinions that are very different than me on, like, a lot of things.
I'm aware.
But, like, even when he'd be, like, saying something that, like, I'd find kind of, like, morally, like, not okay with me, it would still be useful because, like, even if, like, I just pretended you didn't have them, like, X'd out of the group chat, or, like, stopped debating with him, like, and he wouldn't stop having those opinions.
Right.
He wouldn't stop framing the way he thinks about the world. I think it's more useful to try and figure out why people feel some way, why people feel so strongly about that way, and to try out different things to try and change their opinions. Right? Like, I actually like use them as a sounding board a lot of the times, where it's like, does this, like, make sense? Would this be, like, a convincing argument to, like, help people understand my point of view?
Yes. Okay. How do you think we should have reframed that political speech, or
I also think it wasn't helpful, by the way.
Okay.
Like,
I get that.
And anybody who wants to yell at a person is going to yell at people, whether or not you have, like, a bunch of students going up there being like, don't yell at people.
Regardless, do you think it would have been more beneficial in a logical sense to have just straight up said, debate more respectfully, name calling isn't debate, and...
Ad hominem attacks are debates, they're just
bad forms of arguments.
Yeah, but they can help be informative, right? Like,
sure.
At least, like, circumstantial ad hominem, meaning, like, considering specific circumstances of
right.
something.
Okay.
Like, again, like, this happened in the debate last night where I was having with my friends about, like, what is the purpose of our friend group, right?
Yes.
Where it's, like, examining people's biases and, like, why they might think the way they think can actually be helpful, right? Like, so, like, I know, like, it might not be helpful if, like, you just go up to, like, some, like, random, like, Republican and it's like, you only think this because you're white, right? But, like, it's important because it's actually something that person believes, and it's actually something that probably, at least to some degree, does create a bias, right? Like, our demographics or, like, our identities do create biases within our opinions. So, like, name-calling can be informative sometimes.
Sure.
I feel like that's such a bad opinion to say.
I mean, I understand what the point is, right? Because you're just trying to bring something to light, and sometimes just putting the door in the face kind of works.
Yeah, and, like, honestly, I'm one of those people who, like, prefers overt hatred to like secretive hatred.
Right.
Like, I'd rather have somebody insult me to my face than, like, behind my back. And, like, I know, like, we don't want people to insult each other at all, but, like, telling people to debate more respectfully doesn't change the unrespectful opinions they have.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go into maybe less student-run things, but student faculty speakers and the John Hanley lectures. Do you have any favorites? Do you have thoughts on them, or?
Oh yeah, the speeches that we have from, like, a bunch of the students and, like, teachers, they're actually really good. It's really interesting to hear about them. They're probably one of my favorite, like, honor board, like, movement things. Mrs. Grant's speech was cool. Mr. Burns' speech was memorable. Aaron Cooper's speech was really good.
I really liked Aaron's.
He had a lot of guts.
That was a very gutsy speech.
Yeah, I'd never have the guts to do something like that. I liked Ellen's speech too. Again, the speeches of the people I know and whose opinions I know probably are more memorable to me. But I think the speeches end up helping you see how, like, different people really think about honor. And it just ends up creating, like, good, like, food for thought for, like, morality, right? And I think the more thinking we do, the better morals we have, because we create better morals through thinking.
Are there any memorable moments from those speeches that you want to highlight?
When Aaron told us about like his like health group thing,
Yeah.
and like I remember the guy with like the tattoo would get into
Yeah.
fights with his like dad every day, and like apparently got a tattoo that said "family is everything," right?
Mhm.
Like things like that. Like that was a really moving moment. When Mr. Burns told us about like his son who like reported cheating and like got into a bunch of like social problems with that. I think a lot of the times it's like the personal moments, the
Mhm.
things full of emotion that really impact you, right? Like stories. I feel like help us connect to things better, because like we can talk about like abstract philosophies or like abstract morals and rules and duties all the day, but like I feel like when it's real situations with real people and like all of their complicated messes, that's when you like actually get into the parts that are like
Mhm.
helpful.
How about the John Hanley Lecture Series speakers? Not sure how much you remember from those. The most recent one we had was with Dr. John Root Wolpe. He's from Emory, the bioethics guy.
Oh
He's
yeah,
the one who presented the trolley problem to us.
yeah. I love trolleyology.
I know you love trolleyology.
I also didn't like how you presented that problem.
Do you want to go into that a little bit?
I don't actually remember it. I think he was more focused on like the neuroscience aspects of it because he was like a doctor person, right?
He has a PhD in bioethics. He's
Yeah.
the man in bioethics, basically.
Yeah, so like he had more of like the neuroscience perspective of it, like figuring out like why like people believe these things versus
Mhm.
like what we should believe,
Mhm.
which I think is like kind of the point of philosophy, and like I don't know, I think that's like a more relevant question than like why we believe them.
Yeah.
Also, what was it? I remember the person like a while ago, the one who talked about like climate change and like resources in like third world countries.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times these speeches end up creating like a broader view. Like they end up like showing us how like people in the world, like important people, think about like morals and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
honestly, I felt like that they were like less powerful and impactful to me than like the small personal stories. I feel like
Mhm.
I feel like emotions are the stuff you remember, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
really remember like that person talking about like that like bioethic debate like conference he went to like way back when, like 2007 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you remember like the little story about like things that connect with you.
Mhm. I think I'm just about done with questions. Do you have any philosophy things or personal stories that you want to share?
What do you mean?
It can be anything, actually. Anything under the sun. It could be Carrot Top for all intents and purposes.
Now you mentioned it, I have to say it. Thanks a lot.
Sure. So I'll just preface. It's our freshman year Princeton
tell the
debate
story.
tournament. Okay. And we're just trying to get back to where the Pingree kids are hanging out. And there's this kid. He has very, very bright red hair.
We called him Carrot Top because of it. Because
Yes.
we didn't know his name.
We didn't know his name, and he was being very, very, very fickle. He basically just blocked the way, and he was being very annoying. And in the words of Akshina, it was the one and only time you've seen me angry.
Yes. So, essentially what happened is I was walking to the place first, right?
Yes.
And like he blocked my path and he was like, you need like to give me $2 to pass, and I was like, dude, I'm not giving you $2, right? And then he like repeated it, and I like got like angry and like yelled at him, and then he got scared and moved away. But what happened afterwards was Sean came through and like he like blocked the path again, not knowing that like I knew Sean, right? And like I saw him, and then I was just like, dude, Carrot Top, you better not be harassing my friend. And I like started marching down there to like scare him away, and like Sean was upset about that.
Mhm.
You know, I was looking out for your
Yes, I know. I
Yeah.
appreciate it, Akshina.
It was out of love.
I know. It was a little unwarranted, and then I got kind of frustrated from the whole situation, and I
The
just
guy
kind of
deserved
manhandled
it.
him, grabbed him by his shoulders, and then picked him up and then moved him away.
The guy deserved yelling.
That was not genuine anger, Akshina, just so you know.
I know, I'm just saying, the guy did deserve yelling.
Of course.
But It's actually interesting because like it kind of speaks to like a lot of the morals of like what like friendship and like duties.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Oh,
Yes.
another thing. So you know how I was talking about like how like small stories are impactful?
Yeah.
You wanna know what would be cool if like there was a way to like I don't know like submit a bunch of like stories of like things that were like impactful to you morally, like
Mm-hmm.
people who like made like some choice or like something that happened that you feel like has like an emotional or like moral or ethical like thing. The only problem is like these stories tend to be deeply personal, so like
Right.
I feel like a lot of times people don't want to like announce them to the school, which is why I think Karen's speech was really gutsy.
Mhm.
Because like
Right.
he was willing to announce it to the school. It'd be cool if there was a way to do it anonymously with like anonymous names. There was
Maybe a humans of Pingree honor board collab, maybe.
maybe.
And then just make it anonymous.
Yeah, because like a lot of the times, you know how like a lot of times in Humans of New York, you have like just like a picture of their feet or something.
Yes.
Because like they don't want their face plastered to like this traumatic story.
Yeah.
But like that'd be cool because I feel like a lot of the times with like Humans of New York and Humans of Pingree right now, like we just end up talking about like things that we're like willing to talk about.
Yeah.
Rather than like actually like getting like cool like deeper stories. I was gonna say something else. I forgot.
Okay. Well, if it ever comes up again, we can have another episode. And potentially with a little less shut up and screaming here and there.
There wasn't that much.
There wasn't that much, that's true. And this is actually a pretty good reflection of my friendship with Akshina. For those listening. So
Is that a compliment or an insult?
no, that's a compliment, Akshina.
Why? You were talking about the fact that I was screaming being a good reflection of your friendship with you.
I feel like maybe good is not the correct word. I'm using it as a synonym for accurate, maybe. Does that make you feel any better, Akshina?
No, you're saying that I scream at you.
You have in the past.
That's mean. And true.
The truth hurts sometimes, Akshina.
You know that I'm just a loud person.
I know you are. Okay. Before this just sounds like Akshina and me shooting the breeze. Akshina Gupta, Pingree class of 2017, Carnegie Mellon University Computer Science class of 2021. Akshina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.